Kate McCann, Madeleine's mother, was very quietly spoken as she gave evidence behind a blue curtain here at Court 2 at Leicester Crown Court today in the trial of two women accused of stalking her and her family.
Julia's account was the most viral I'd seen, so I tracked her down to an address in Poland.
Oh yeah, okay, let's do that.
After careful consideration and conversations with me, she agreed to tell her side of the story.
Now, she painted a picture of being persistently messaged by one of the women, Julia Wandelt, who is 24 and from Poland, claiming that she was her missing daughter, Madeleine McCann, even leaving answer phone messages for her because she managed to get hold of her phone number.
I knew my goal, I knew my purpose, because I wanted to know who I am.
Julia says a traumatic childhood left her with patchy memories. She thought she might be adopted, and then she came across the McCann case. She also discovered a physical similarity to Madeleine, a rare eye abnormality.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science. How does that saying go? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. How about fool me thrice? Because yes, wowza, fake Madeleine McCann has claimed to be 3 different missing girls. That's crazy. Guys, this doesn't seem to be fake Madeleine's first missing child rodeo. At one time, fake Madeleine claimed to be Inga Gericke from Germany. Next, fake Madeleine wondered if she was Acacia Bishop from Utah in America. But it seems fake Madeleine had by far the most success trying to convince people she's Madeleine. What I think is interesting is how quickly she was persuaded she wasn't Inga from Germany or Acacia from Utah in the USA. Meanwhile, fake Madeleine took a long time to be convinced she's not the missing British girl, and apparently still isn't convinced. It makes me wonder whether the reluctance and hesitation of the McCanns to do a DNA test, which seemed to go on for years, basically seemed to encourage fake Madeleine that she not only was getting somewhere, but gaining tons of converts. And we know social media blew up at one stage. Didn't she have 1 million followers on Instagram at a certain point? Now, for someone with no identity, for someone who didn't know who she is, we can see how we can appreciate how pretending to be Madeleine possibly gave the poor girl the most clout she's ever experienced in her young life. She even got to go on Dr. Phil. In January 2024, fake Madeleine told Mariana Spring, a disinformation and social media correspondent for the BBC, that she regretted posting online that she was Madeleine McCann. But she also said, "I really wanted to know who I am." And so I think a really interesting legal question that needs to be determined during this particular trial is whether Julia's intentions are entirely malicious and manipulative, or whether it's someone who's simply confused and perhaps suffering from a slightly fragmented state of mind. Or is it a combination of mischief and, to some extent, sincere questions about herself? So when Julia says, "I really wanted to know who I am," that may be true, but I'm not sure if you find out who you are by going to the parents of famous missing persons. How about not famous missing persons?
I think I can be this person, I can be this girl. But no one treated me seriously.
When she went to authorities with her concerns, she says she didn't feel listened to, so she turned to social media instead.
What could go wrong? Well, before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. By the way, if you're interested in the Charlie Kirk case, I'll be following this video with a video dealing with the likely court case and possible defenses for the suspect in the assassination of Charlie Kirk. So look out for that. If you're finding this analysis worthwhile, please do hit the thanks button and let's get started.
Her account soon had more than 1 million followers, Some sent support, even gifts.
So when the BBC's disinformation expert went to visit fake Madeleine at her flat in Poland, this is what she saw. She said, "As I arrived, I was greeted by a loud meow from Julia's cat Monty." Now, rather than posting about the Madeleine McCann case, Julia shares videos of her cat, doing tricks. But isn't she a bit young to already be a cat lady? Now, it's quite interesting that Julia seems to be, not sure if it's explicitly said, but she seems to be kind of trying to make money on social media using kind of animal footage, pet footage. That seems to be how she's trying to make a living. And if you take that and put that into the context of the Madeleine McCann case in social media, I think it's also quite interesting. Anyway, she says, so who exactly is Julia, and why did she post on social media that she was Madeleine? Julia says, what happened had its roots in a traumatic childhood. Now, as far as I know, I'm certainly not someone who actually, I think, even went to a profile when it was up, but wasn't her profile called I am Madeleine McCann? That's pretty definitive, wouldn't you say? Anyway, she goes on to say, music became her escape, she says. From time to time as we talk, she picks up her guitar and sings an improvised song. It's still the way to deal with the difficulties in my life, Julia says. Later, aged about 20, Julia was in therapy and started to realize her memories from childhood were patchy, with chunks of time where she couldn't remember much at all. Now, I think that's normal. I've actually had that with some of my breakups as well. Eventually, you kind of can't even remember anything from someone you'd spent actually years with. In any event, psychiatrists and psychologists I've spoken to say it's common to experience memory loss if you've been traumatized. It's the brain's way of protecting us, they say. So that part is quite normal. Julia started to wonder if the blanks in her memory might hide a big secret, that maybe she had been adopted. She began to ask her relatives to help fill in the gaps. Now, that makes sense, and that is the right place to start. And so she would ask them, can you show me some pictures from childhood? Can you show me your pregnancy photos? Julia says. Now, obviously, today is a little bit different in terms of the number of photos that we have of everything compared to when there were sort of film cameras, and certainly not the kind of ubiquitous use of cell phones that we have today. In any event, she says her family dismissed her concerns that she might be adopted and wouldn't answer her questions. That only served to fuel her suspicions. Frustrated by her family's silence, Julia turned to the internet for answers. She started Googling missing persons websites from her bedroom. That was when she found Madeleine's case. Now remember I said previously, your focus determines your reality. Well, simply because Julia believed she was a missing child, not only a missing child, but the most famous missing child in the world, that's who she became. Now, one aspect that makes this easier to believe is that fake Madeleine has a defect in her eye, which is quite rare, much like the real Madeleine. And so if we're talking about evidence that is something that is evidentiary, it's a similarity, but is that enough? Was that enough in this case? Have you guys heard the saying, one swallow doesn't make a summer? To Julia's credit, she did try to investigate. She called the police. But then fake Madeleine, I think, made an error in her decision making. She turned to social media. And of course, the rest is history. Now, I must say, I think one's got to be careful. Are we dealing with someone who's impersonating someone else? If you believe you're someone else, are you impersonating someone else? Or if you innocently believe you're someone else, and then later you can't prove it, does that then become impersonating? Does it then become malicious? Or are we simply dealing with naivete? Because certain parts of what we're dealing with feel like impersonating someone else's missing child, not just once or twice, but 3 times. And may not be, impersonating might be the wrong word, it might be believing that you're somebody else. I do think the only thing more absurd than Julia playing a sort of eeny, meeny, miny, mo, pick a missing child to think that's who you are, I think the only thing more absurd than that are the folks who actually believed her. I mean, if her impersonating other kids doesn't raise alarm bells, what will? And then when you have the DNA tests, and what more do you need than that? And when that is refuted, well, I'm still going to believe that anyway. I mean, well, then it's not about evidence, then it's about just what you believe. Then your focus is your reality. And so what I think Julia's story also shows is what a cesspool social media can be. No matter what cockamamie stuff you come up with, there will always be people out there who believe you. According to the BBC, Julia turned to social media for community, for validation, and for answers, while the online world can be a quick and easy place to find an intense sense of belonging. One can argue this validation was also a kind of online radicalization that eventually led Julia to exactly where she is today. So just think about it in that sense, that she's validated by these people, but perhaps some of these people also encourage her to take steps that she otherwise wouldn't. And isn't that what got Julia to where she is today? She's a Polish girl on trial in a British court, and there's a woman sitting beside her who's from Britain, who possibly had some role in encouraging her, in inspiring her, in giving her ideas in terms of this whole thing. And they are both facing criminal charges. If Julia is convicted, she may even face up to 12 months in prison. And that is for going down certain rabbit holes starting in her bedroom. And what kind of rabbit holes? Well, rabbit holes dug in a way by social media, provided by social media. On my own channel, I see plenty of people doing what Julia has been doing for the past several years. And what has she been doing? She's been believing whatever she wants to believe. Do you still think it doesn't do any harm to be wrong about that? Do you still think it doesn't do any harm to think about certain things that could be possible? Do you think that's completely harmless? You know, I did a poll on my channel just asking how many people, well, do you believe in conspiracy theories? And basically 20%, by far the minority, don't. And what I think is really incredible, and it's possibly the legacy of the Ramsey case and the Madeleine McCann case, amongst others, I think that the legacy is that a lot of people think that it is good to believe in conspiracies. And do you think that has been good for Julia? Yes or no? Do you think that has been good for Julia?
I spent quite a lot of time trying to track her down. She'd removed this I Am Madeleine McCann Instagram account. It had been taken down. At this point, she'd stepped back from it. But I managed to find her personal account. We had several conversations, and she decided she wanted to kind of tell her side of the story. And
the impression I get from this, especially the account being taken down, is that fake Madeleine kind of had a change of heart where she saw the light. She realized what was going on. So how is she where she is now? How did she end up being on trial? Why did she go back to Britain? And isn't that because in the interim, after perhaps she took the account down, she was radicalized online by the people who still wanted to pursue that whole idea? Because bear in mind, this interview was posted on the 31st of January 2024. And it was conducted when Julia was in Poland. Meanwhile, Miss Wandelt was arrested basically 13 months later, in February 2025, after flying to Bristol Airport. And so one can't help thinking that perhaps someone watched this documentary where she said, "I'm sorry I did this." And didn't someone then look at that and basically say, well, basically invite her back into that rabbit hole? And isn't that exactly what happened? Well, the trial continues, and I guess we'll be finding that out in due course. Watch this space. All right, I'm not going to take it further than that. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.